So I thought I would talk about this a little bit because I thought it was pretty funny. If you've been on X or Twitter recently, you know that Elon Musk rolled out a new feature where basically you can see the account location for accounts now by going to their profile and clicking on their join date. And this is what it typically looks like. So what I've been seeing is a lot of accounts that are those engagement farming accounts. They post random slop at regular intervals every single day and just like ask some kind of question to try to farm the most engagement that they can so they can get a few cents off of each post. Or they're one of those politically charged accounts that's like tankies and they love Mao and Stalin and everything. Or on the other end, they're like those based accounts and they're like save Europa and everything. And then you look inside, you click on that join date and oh, look at that, they're getting run by Indians. So a lot of people have been cooking the Indian community over that. Like there's been tons of accounts that are getting exposed and some of these guys are crashing out. A lot of racism now going back and forth between white people making fun of Indians and then Indians trying to like make fun of white people. But I'm not here today to talk about that particular dynamic when it comes to the locations update exposing people. So I first saw this from the account Mahiru Soldier, and it turns out the biggest misandrist anti-Japanese man account ever. An account that constantly spread hate towards Japanese men. An account that was demonizing them as predators, old creepy dudes who preyed after young girls and they committed all kinds of sex crimes and they did all these horrible things. That was all you would see on this account. Japan Men Archive. And some of the most smooth-brained, low IQ, pronouns and flags and bio people ever would love referencing accounts like this one to talk about how terrible Japan and men are whenever people made the point that Japan is actually really nice, it has low crime, things like that. They would bring up Junko Furuta and then quote tweet and retweet posts by this account, which massively disparage Japanese men. It turns out that it's actually just by a Korean feminist pretending to be a Japanese woman talking about how terrible Japanese men are. And if you don't know, South Korea has the lowest birth rate in the OECD, and they have this movement called 4B, which is just like, we're not going to reproduce and we're not going to interact with men at all. Like some hyper feminist movement that they got going on over there. And you might have seen this graph before. A wide ideology gap is opening up between young men and women in countries around the world. And the most extreme divide is that between South Korean men and South Korean women, where South Korean men have become massively more conservative, and there's the biggest gap between the two, making the scene in the US, Germany, and the UK seem like men and women are just best friends and there's no gender war nonsense happening at all, at least by comparison. I mean, that is crazy. Just absolutely hilarious to see this though. The biggest Japanese feminist account run by a Korean, and you know it's a Korean woman too, right? Very low odds that it was a man running that account. And then as soon as they got caught, they tried to take countermeasures to hide their location, and then the account ended up getting deleted. Absolutely hilarious turn of events. There are a lot of people that didn't really care that their location was revealed, but those are typically people from Western countries that weren't really hiding in the first place. But rodents like this, rats like the person running this account, JPN Men Archive, to hate on men and hate on Japanese men in particular for some weird reason when you're a South Korean woman. Yeah, she was super embarrassed to get caught, I guess, and then just decided to disappear, roach out as soon as people figured out what was going on. The jig was up. And then somebody pointed out the Megalian, like your meat is small symbol, the hand symbol thing. In Korean culture, that's used by like feminists, like extreme feminists that are part of this like terrorist organization that hates men. They do weird things like aborting male fetuses and cutting them up and then posting that stuff online, and I'm not going to show images of that. They've got this more extreme splinter group called WOMAD, which is like a combination of woman and nomad, and they're like even more into the man hate and trying to attack men and make their lives worse and everything like that, and it's just really not going to make their own lives better. I don't really see what is the purpose of all of this. They try to affect policies that would negatively affect men, like forcing more mandatory military time and taking away any kinds of bonuses, but not having women participate in any of that like mandatory military action. They generally hate men. Like the Megalian cult, they are the definition of misandrist. And I think that it's hilarious that there was a misandrist trying to spread their propaganda, their anti-man propaganda, to Japan as well, trying to pit Japanese women against Japanese men. This is one of the funnier and also less surprising things things that I've seen come from the update where you can see people's locations now. Because, like, if you know, generally the youth in Japan aren't really that politically involved and invested into that type of stuff, so you don't have radical feminists and all sorts of stuff like that going around, at least too much, the way that you do in South Korea. At least there's no, like, propagation of a 4B movement over in Japan. So maybe this Korean chick was trying to push that to Japan, and to that I would say that that is just absolutely pathetic, and this is obviously a lonely witch who is not going to have a very great life for the remainder of her life if you're doing things like this, trying to psyop the Japanese into hating each other. In the first place, the whole gender war stuff is stupid. I'm not some red pill guy or anything like that. I just point out when women have this, like, irrational hatred towards men and they're completely unreasonable. And this is just another case of that, like, to go so far as to try to psyop the Japanese into being in some worse gender conflict. It's absolutely insane. Like, some people really just need to get a job. I guess she couldn't land the job at Samsung or one of the other chaebols, so she decided to do this with her free time. But let me know what you guys think about this. I think that it's pretty funny. I mean, there's multiple accounts like this, but this one getting exposed as being some Korean feminist and even having the hand symbol thing in the title, Japanese Men Archive, with the two, like, small meat symbols. I don't know what that is, what they call it over there, but all the misandrists use it, so it's very funny. That was actually a tell, I guess, if you really think about it, before they actually revealed the location. You could have told that it was a Korean by them using that symbol. But yeah, it's the most miserable people in the world that will always be losers, that are just going to hate somebody because of the sex that they were born as, something that they can't control, and men and women need each other anyway, so it's not like one is inferior or superior to the other. But that's just my thoughts. This is probably the best update that Elon has ever brought over to X. But anyway, thank you guys for watching to the end of the video, and I'll see you next time.